Hello, and welcome back to Owens Bay. We're just going to do a quick little flyover of some of the projects we worked on in our last episode, like this geothermal electrical plant down below here. Now that I've started to work on this valley area in here, I'm starting to get a few more ideas of how I want this area to develop in the future. So not quite ready to build in here yet, but we're getting closer. There's a lot of empty space in here that could be utilized in interesting ways, I think. And here's the water treatment plant we worked on. And we're just going to fly over the industrial area we detailed as well. For this episode, this is going to be a bit of an in-between episode. It's going to be fairly light on the detailing. This is more about building some infrastructure, getting things in place for the detailing episodes that are going to be probably coming up in the next, I'm going to say, 2 episodes. Yeah, a bit of a different pace for this one. Not every episode can be a detailing episode. Anyway, the area we're going to be working on is starting to come into view here on the other side of the river, down below. We're going to start a brand new town site, and this is going to be a bit different, and I'm going to get into why it's going to be a little different during the course of the episode. Anyway, my name is Geis, and let's get started. Okay, so here we are. Here's what we're going to be working on. This town site that I've been wanting to start for quite some time now. I know it looks like a bit of a mess down here. The road layout, everything down here is subject to change. I'm not focused on keeping any of it. A lot of it was there just to get some roads into place. And right now we're kind of doing a bit of a look-see over Sasquatch National Park. That is going to be detailed as well. Although it's mostly going to be landscape detailing. It's all about natural beauty up here, not really about infrastructure, although there is a major highway project that's going to be built through there. Probably 2 episodes from now, I think. It's kind of hard to know exactly to pace out the episodes right now. How much work is going to be involved here, it's a bit uncertain. I'm just basically surveying the town site here, trying to figure out how I'm going to work with the landscape. There's going to be a bit of terraforming that's going to happen in this episode. I try to keep it light. I don't try to deform the landscapes too much from their original state. I try to work things in so they look like they belong, but sometimes I do resort to some heavy terraforming to get things where I want them to be. What I'm doing right now is I'm just kind of laying in or drawing in where the future highway project is going to go, just so I know where it's going to be in the landscape. We have like the new highway project that's going to be built, but before the new highway project, there would have been an old highway that would have cut through the valley, and this is like an old dangerous highway. Windy, twisty, lots of cliff sides. Very long. It's a very long drive through here too because of that. And this goes through a couple of, I kind of reworked this a few times as I'm building it because, you'll see what happens here as I start to build. I start getting little ideas in my head about how things should look. And I started having to do some alterations to the landscape. So what is happening here is I start building in this old highway. I have this lake up in the Sasquatch Valley up here, right? And it kind of starts annoying me that this lake, there should really be water flowing between this lake and the main river, and there's not. So I get in my head that here we go again. I'm going to build another river. This is a bit of a different process than the other ones. Halfway through making this river, I kind of come to the realization that I've been just going about this all the wrong way. when I try to draw in a new creek or river, I always have a tendency to want to start at the source of the water, in this case being the lake. And it's always this difficult, horrible mess that seems to take forever, and it takes incredible amount of work to actually get it to look right. And yeah, I'd say about the halfway point of making this particular river, it dawned on me that I'm going about this the wrong way. I should not be starting at this water source. I should be starting at where the river or creek ends and working my way back into the landscape. It would make everything so much easier if I went about it that way, rather than what I'm trying to do here is like I'm using the slope tool to try to draw it in, and it's not working. I mean, it sort of works a little bit, but it's totally back ass here. Yeah, so bear with me as I struggle through this. There's a lot of struggle in this episode, trying to get things to fit properly, building infrastructure, spending hours building infrastructure only to realize that I made a critical error and it's all wrong and I have to tear it out and start again. So there's a lot of that in this episode. Anyway, this actual river turned out really good in the end. It actually is a river with actual flowing water in it. The first one on the map. I don't think any of the rivers I have on this map flow properly. Even the two big rivers don't flow correctly on this map. But this is the first one that actually, it actually has water that actually flows through it. So I achieved a milestone, a personal milestone here. Now, because of the way I'm doing this, I have to kind of reimagine where the mountains are, or hills here are where they sit, how they lie. Basically, I have to kind of create more of a valley for the river to sit in. I promise I'm not going to spend too much of the episode doing this. Like I've said this in other episodes, you've already seen me make several of these already. I don't really want to spend a whole much more time doing it. Although on this map, like I said before, I'm probably going to have to draw in quite a few more creeks and streams and rivers because, you know, the climate is very wet here. So water would be flowing down a lot of these valleys and stuff. And I have to make some sort of representation of it on the map. Interesting thing about the water in this particular one, where the lake is not water sources for the lake are just constant water sources rather than the constant flow water sources. So, and it seems to work just fine. Like water is flowing out of there at a fairly steady rate. The constant flow sources tend to flood out the entire landscape, whereas there's a bit of flooding and I have to do a bit of, editing of the landscape to kind of control it, but it's not really all that bad. Now that I'm putting a river in, I have to rethink where the actual old highway is going to go. It's not going to go where I thought it was. Also, the other thing I have to now deal with was when thinking about this city or what I might be building here, I wasn't planning for there to be an actual river for the actual town. So now I have to plan for that. Here is another one of my internal struggles here is this rail crossing here at the mouth of the river. I don't think this is realistic, and the final solution I come up for is not particularly realistic either. I don't think it would be this close to the actual main river. It would probably be back, but just because of the constraints of where I'm building and how I'm trying to build it, it's going to have to sit here, and I'm just going to have to live with it and accept it as being one of the less than perfect parts of map build here. I am going to have to come back here and play with these roads. As you can see, I'm having some difficulty, like right here, for instance. I'm not going to focus too much on my road building. Out of everything I could do in City Skylines 2, road building is probably my weakest skill. And it's not something I really want to spend a huge amount of time torturing everybody with, making them watch it. If you're coming here looking for road building tips and tricks, yeah, I'm not your guy. I am not good at it. And my roads tend to be functional, but not optimized for perfect traffic flow or anything like that. In fact, I'm kind of more interested in, I wouldn't say necessarily bad road design, but you know, in the real world, there's tons of examples of roads that are not that good, and that's kind of what I lean into. So yeah, road design, not my strong suit. Right here, this is kind of like the end point of the old highway when it comes where it's going to connect into town, and I'm just drawing in where it's going to go. It's mostly going to just follow this new river path of least resistance here. Now what I'm doing here with this tree is I'm uncertain about flooding and how the water is going to behave, so I'm using these pine trees as kind of water markers. So if I can come back to that, look at it in the future, and if I see the water creeping up the side of it, I know that I'm going to have flooding issues and I have to adjust. And I'm just going to put in kind of the general outline for where the highway is going to go. This is going to change. I'm going to come back and redraw it. It's just, I'm just putting it in here so I know where the highway sits in relation to where the town's going to be. Now, I've been trying to think of a backstory for this town, and what I mostly have settled on is it's going to be, historically, it would have been a resource-based economy for this town, primarily logging, like many of the small towns in this region. It's going to be a fairly old town. I'm going to say, like, we could play around the idea that a logging camp was established here, say in the 1880s. That's not unreasonable. Those were popping up on the Pacific coast at that time quite often, cutting down beautiful, pristine old growth forest with tree trunks the size of, cars. That was a very common thing back at that time, which is truly unfortunate, but that's what's happened. The narrative I'm going to spin for this particular town is, by the 1950s, the logging industry has pretty much come to a conclusion. There was an establishment of a new national park, and so it was basically a small town with a fading small town with an industry that was kind of like in terminal decline. At this time, the city decides to pivot to more of a tourist-oriented economy. We're going to get into that more in the next episode. I am waiting for the German regional pack. I'm hoping there's assets in there that I can utilize for this build. I don't know what's in the pack yet. Judging by what was in the French pack, I'm hopeful that there's going to be a few assets in here that I can utilize in this build to give this town a bit of a unique flavor in the region. right now I'm just going through, this is basically, I'm trying to figure out a basic road layout for the town. It's, it's a North American town, so its main layout is going to be a grid. I mean, there's, unless we're dealing with some very tiny town, almost all towns of any size in North America will have a bit of a grid layout. Now, I'm going to build a grid for basically the core of the town, but once we get past the core of the town, I'm going to get a little more loose with the road layout. So just so it has a bit of personality, right? It can't just all be grid. It's interesting, as I work on the layout for this town, more of its story, I kind of create more of its story as I go, and it's kind of, this is rather a difficult one because it's a bit backwards to how I would usually do this. Like, all I'm doing here is the road layout, and I'm going to basically zone up the residential areas for the town. I'm not going to be building out any of the commercial area. I'm not going to be building out any industry. There's not going to be a huge amount of industry in this town. It's kind of it's not industry focused anymore, but I got to build the remnants of industry in the area as well. So I have to think about that. But because I'm not building the downtown core of the town, and I'm not even 100% sure what the downtown core is going to look like yet, it just makes this very awkward. It's a very awkward way to try to build a town. It's not very, feels very inorganic, or just wrong. The whole process feels very wrong, and it makes it difficult. And I think that I struggle with this quite a bit in this episode because, yeah, nothing about this town, like trying to make it feel organic, but not develop it in any way that seems organic. And it's not like I build towns in a purely organic way, but I try to imagine what their history might have been like and try to build infrastructure that reflects that. In this case, I'm missing a huge piece of the puzzle, so I'm not even sure what I'm building this road layout for yet. Now I'm going to put in all the basic services needed for this small town. I'm not exactly sure what the population of this area is going to be yet. If I had to guess, I'm going to say maybe around 2,000, maybe 3,000 total. So we don't need massive infrastructure here, but I want to make sure all of it's in place. So I'm just going to spend a bit of time putting it all down here. And all this could change. Once I get into the detailing phase, I might have to move things around. Roads might have to change. So this is just, I'm just creating the starting point here. I go for the cemetery in this town. I haven't placed a cemetery yet, or at least not the full scale one. And this seemed like a good opportunity to include that somewhere on the map. And this is all I'm going to draw for the old highway for the moment. I do draw in a bit more of it at the end of the episode. Not really 100% sure where the old road will go yet, so not really committed there. I wanted to give the high school some sort of sports field. The sports field for the high school is way too large for this tiny town, so we're going to go with a soccer field instead. And now I'm just going to start zoning the residential. This is pretty straightforward. In the town center, the lot sizes for all the houses are going to be fairly consistent, 3x4 lots. Like I said, I'm just placing buildings right now. There's no detailing in this episode. And even though I'm not focused on putting down any real commercial, I am going to put a little bit in so the town actually has some place where they can buy their necessities. I actually don't want to build too much like industry or offices or commercial space. Well, there will be more commercial space, but I'm very cautious about adding more jobs. Right now, we have a surplus of jobs in the region, so I don't necessarily need to be adding more workplaces at this point. I still have a homeless issue after all the patches, and I'm starting to think I probably have a legit homeless problem, so I definitely need more homes, and that's kind of what I'm doing here. Now, I also wanted a bit of a little play field for the elementary school, but I didn't want to have to reuse the soccer field, so I'm just going to make a little custom one here. All this is a placeholder, so I know there's going to be a field there. And I found a little divot in the landscape, and I couldn't resist putting in another little pond. Moving a few things around here as I kind of feel out how I want where I want things in the town. Now, as we move away from the town center, the lot sizes for the houses are going to start getting a little larger and a little more spaced out. Now I'm going to be, for the connection from the highway to downtown, it's just going to be a pretty basic T intersection. Although I do kind of do a horrible job of making one here, I'll have to come back in and fix it up a little bit. None of my highway interchanges in this episode are particularly good. And like I said, I, for some reason, was really just struggling to get them to look right or even function properly. Now right here, this is up closer to the actual highway, so I am imagining this is a much more newer development. So it is essentially just a modern housing development with uniform housing throughout the entire thing. Now I make an attempt here to fix this mess of a railroad. I move it all over closer to the river's edge here, just to give myself more space to build the highway interchange. And I double up the tracks just to allow more the trains to travel through this area a little easier than they were. I love these long trains. They're so cool and so fitting too. That's the real size of freight trains. Okay, here's where everything goes off the rails, literally. This whole intersection. I don't include a lot of it in the video here. I'm not kidding you. I spent several hours trying to make this intersection work, only to finally realize that it had a fatal flaw in it. Not a fatal flaw, but like it was just really badly designed. Yeah, totally frustrating experience. And okay, here now to make it even more complicated for myself, I'm starting to imagine like we got the origin story for the town kind of fleshed out, but now we have like that brings us up to the 1960s. Now we have what happened since then. So I'm imagining in the 2000s, early 2000s, that the region starts construction on a mass transit system, and it's going to terminate out here at this little town. It's quite close to like New Sunderland, so it makes sense that it would be included in a transit system for the region. As I'm building this out, I'm starting to imagine what impact this transit system might have had on the development of the town since the early 2000s. So I'll get into more of that in the detailing episode. So yeah, this, oh my God, this was such a struggle session for this whole thing. And here was another thing I wasn't anticipating. This is the subway station. I had no intention of ever building a subway station here. This wasn't on my radar at all. But once I started thinking about including this rail line, I realized I didn't really have a good location to put the station. Or not the station, the depot. This is the only place I could think that made some sort of sense. Now I move it around a bit here. I am basically trying to figure out the layout. I decided I needed to put an actual station here. And you might think, well, that's a bit weird. There's nothing here. The idea being that when these sorts of rapid transit systems are built, usually stations are built in areas where there doesn't seem to be any reason for them to be there. And then over the following, say, next couple decades, the entire area builds up quite substantially to take advantage of it. So that's what I'm kind of envisioning for this location. Oh, and to make it even more interesting, I decided that under the highway would be a perfect spot for a substation, electrical substation. So this transit system, I'm in the very early stages of thinking about it. I still have to decide. Now I have to figure out how it's going to interact with New Sunderland and Queensport and all the points in between. That's probably a few episodes in the future. We can sort of imagine it in its incomplete state right now as a infrastructure project in the process of being built out. I really kind of hate this stage of road construction. Everything looks so messy and not well integrated into the landscape. And it's a bit of a process, like a back and forth process of digging it up, laying the roads, redrawing the roads over and over again to get the layout right, and then kind of landscaping the area around it so it looks like it all belongs together. It's a lengthy process, or sometimes it's a lengthy process. For this particular build, it was a very lengthy process. So one idea I'm thinking about here is I kind of want houses to be cutting into the hillside above, just below the cliffs here. So that's something else that's going to get a little more attention in the next episode. Okay, what I'm working on here is what my final solution for this interchange finally turned out to be, and it's just a fairly simple trumpet interchange. It has a bit of a odd road connection on one end. Like I said, I'm not the person to come to for efficient or optimal road design. That's not really what I'm about. So this isn't the most efficient road layout, and you might be wondering how those people get onto the highway in the reality is, in order for everybody down there to get on the highway, they have to drive up onto the new highway and then come down through town and then loop around and come back on that way. So it's a bit of a roundabout way, but they can get to the highway. I might redesign that. Like, once everything's built and in place and the city starts running for a while, if it starts becoming like a huge issue for traffic and stuff, I'll have to come back and redo it again and build something better. But for the moment, it's what I'm going to go with. Here I am attempting a super node. I haven't really made a whole bunch of these yet, so this one, it probably could be better than how it turned out, but I'm just playing around with it here. Starting to get some ideas of what I might want to be building up here to warrant the station being there. And because there is a station there, I'm like thinking I'll need pedestrian access to the station, so just putting in where I think it might go. Once again, none of this is set in stone. It might change, but this seemed like the most logical place to put it for the moment. Okay, so I'm just now going to kind of drawing a bit more of the highway, where it's going to go. We have to imagine this old highway as a dangerous mountain pass where, like, it's a windy, twisty road, lots of steep cliffs. In the winter, it is lots of fatalities, especially in the wintertime. And it's kind of the reason why the new highway was built, as also as for time saving. This would be a very long route to have to drive. But we're actually coming near the end of the episode. This is a short one. Like I said, this is like in between. Sometimes there's necessary work that needs to be done before I can really get into the detailing, and trying to cram that all into one episode would just make it either very long or very abrupt and a lot of editing out of a lot of work. So rather than doing that, I've just decided to split into two parts. And to finish it off, I'm just gonna put in a few trees. And this is pretty much the end of the episode. So if you stuck around to the end, thank you so much for watching. If you found anything useful in the video, please feel free to like and subscribe. It will really help out. The more subscribers I have, essentially the more time I can spend making videos. It's the basic math behind that. Anyway, I'm looking forward to the next episode. That should be a lot of fun. We're going to get into a lot more detailing. I think it's going to be really fun. And I will see you all next time. Take care.